Hi, I'm Tania Carolina Romero Virgil, and I'm going to talk.
My name is Carlos Villarreal.
Hi, I am Clarissa Rostro.
Hi, I'm Tania Rosas.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Romero, and I'm going to talk about drug abuse. Drug abuse is a public health problem not only because it's an abuse and it's a dependency, it's also because it's a physiological and social affections. So basically, every drug abuse can develop different behaviors, different health problems. There are some examples as marijuana, LSD, tobacco, alcohol, and I want to talk about marijuana. Marijuana is an oral drug that the consumption of it swallow ice and it got bloodshot eyes. This causes anxiety and lack of comprehension of information and low motor functional abilities as driving, etc. And in long term, it can develop respiratory problems and basically unfunctional brain system.
Now I'm going to talk about heroin, one of the most common and dangerous drugs in this country. Some of the symptoms after taking heroin are heaviness in extremities, shortness of breath, dry mouth, constricted pupils or smaller, sudden changes in behaviors and attitudes, and droopy appearance, as long as también also hyperalertness. And some of the withdrawal symptoms are cravings for more, sweating, muscle and bone ache, fever, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea.
I'm going to talk about the methamphetamine. The methamphetamine affects the brain with increase the amount of dopamine, and also some effects of this drug is sleeping, is not to sleep, insomnia, also paranoia, increase the blood pressure, decrease appetite, and those are some effects of the drugs. But also, if it is overdoses, these drugs can affect can have a heart attack and also an organ problem. And some of the best treatments to this drug is the behavioral and cognitive therapy and the motivational incentives.
About cocaine and LCD addiction. Cocaine. Oftentimes, the signs of cocaine addiction can be difficult to identify. One of the most important steps in recovery journey is understanding the signs, symptoms, and side effects of barbiturate addiction. Cocaine works as a stimulant that affects the central nervous system by increasing the levels of dopamine, a neurotransmitter in the brain. This stops the signal effects between two brain cells. Effects of cocaine addiction: anxiety, depression, coma, psychosis, stroke, heart attack, permanent changes to heart rhythms, blood-borne disease, legal problems, unemployment, divorce, and domestic violence. LCD. Lysergic acid diethylamide is an extremely potent hallucinogen. It is synthetically made from lysergic acid, which is found in ergot, a fungus that grows in rye and other grains. It is so potent, it does tend to be a microgram range. Its effects, often called a trip, can be stimulating, placebo, and mind-altering, or it can lead to unpleasant, sometimes terrifying experience called bad trip. LSD is produced in a crystalline form and then mixed with other inactive ingredients, or diluted in a liquid for production in digestive forms. It is odorless, colorless, and has a slightly bitter taste. Effects include hallucinations, distorted visual perception of shapes and colors, altered sounds, anxiety and depression, flashbacks days or months later, rapid heart rate, increased body temperature, and high blood pressure, and dilated pupils. Extreme changes in mud can occur. If taken in large enough doses, the drug produces delusion and visual hallucinations. Overdose can lead to severe psychosis. Death is often due to a direct injury while under LSD influence. There is no lethal dose of LSD. Thank you.
And I'm going to talk about tobacco and alcohol abuse. Well, first of all, what is tobacco? Tobacco is a plant with potential harmful chemicals that, well, is created when you burn it. You can either, well, there are a lot of ways you can consume this plant. You can smoke it, you can chew it, you can sniff it, and there's a lot of products, or there's some products that contain tobacco. The most known one is cigarettes, but there's also biddies and quittix. Well, what happens when tobacco gets into your blood? It immediately stimulates the adrenal glands, which are the ones in charge of producing the hormone called epinephrine. And well, this also stimulates your adrenaline and stimulates your dopamine, which makes you feel good every time you smoke. But it increases your blood pressure, breathing, and well, your heart rate and overall functions in your body. There is short-term and long-term consequences for smoking. In the long term, it can cause you lung cancer, bronchitis, asthma, heart diseases, and a lot of nasty diseases, all revolving around smoking. In the short term, it can cause irritability, problems paying attention, trouble sleeping, increased appetites, and well, the cravings for smoking. There are behavioral treatments and medications and support groups to help you battle the addiction. You can target nicotine receptors, or you can try to ingest less nicotine by having electronic cigarettes. And well, alcohol. Alcohol is a drug that slowly brings down the brain functions and basically leaves you brainless, and in some cases emotionally unstable. What are the signs of alcoholism? Well, you start neglecting your responsibilities or your own personal care, or you start getting reckless, you start having depression, as having mood swings and being very emotionally unstable. You're having conflicts with the people that you love. You are declining your academic or professional performance, and you can even get drunk in situations that are hazardous or are not the best to be drinking or drunk at. And well, you have cravings for drinking when you're not drinking. Well, what can happen? That's in the long term. In the short term, it can cause, well, nausea, vomiting, headaches. You can have trouble with your speech. You have impaired judgment, which means that you're having trouble judging a situation correctly, so you start being reckless. And you have anxiety, insomnia, trouble concentrating, memory loss, breathing problems, coma, and if you're not careful enough and you drink too much, you can even have death. So, I'm gonna give you some more long-term consequences in your health. You can develop mouth, and basically all your tract system can have a type of cancer, and even your breast. You increase your risk of having heart problems and cardiopathy. You can have brain damage, weakened immune system, liver disease, pancreatitis, ulcers, and the list goes on for the long-term effects. How can you treat this? Well, basically you can go to support centers to talk to other individuals that were and are addicted, so you can treat your alcohol. And they are generally, they require you to stay a little bit on that center for a period of time until your addiction is cured. or you can go to an outpatient treatment, which is basically like it's also a center in which you can go to explore the destructive behavior of your alcohol and the consequences of drinking, and basically, is basically a therapy but in group. And to conclude this, all drugs are a mask. All drugs are there for a reason. You don't develop an alcohol addiction or a tobacco addiction out of nowhere. You have to have emotional distress or emotional problems to develop an addiction. And how do you cover your emotional problems? Well, you basically become addicted to a substance. Every addiction is a mask for something else. You cover your problems by going into a substance and basically ruining your life by not having the courage to face what you truly have to face. And that is the conclusion for basically every drug ever produced. It's an escape out of reality, because reality can be cruel, but trying to escape it with drugs is not the right solution. Thank you for your